Hello, hello. The silence is like there's a lot of silence. I know this is a silence producing machine, but the silence is kind of tough. Yeah, let's not be so silent, please. Do we need microphone? Yes, please.
Sí, yo nomás les platico que como trabajé muchos años como maestro, lo que hacía era que muchos estudiantes a veces se sentaban hasta atrás para no participar y es a los primeros que les dirigía la palabra, a los de atrás.
Bueno, ninguna mejor presentación de Francisco Téllez que la que acaban de experimentar. Me da de verdad muchísimo gusto darle la bienvenida a él y a ustedes a esta conversación que durará 1 hora. Voy a conversar con él no más de 45 minutos y tendremos un ratito para que también ustedes puedan plantear preguntas, comentarios y demás. Francisco Téllez no podría haber faltado a esta cita, a este evento, por muchísimo.
It was a necessity for a number of motives or reasons. I will read a small that makes justice, and at the same time, it doesn't make justice to him because it's very brief and good, and of course, we could spend a whole hour reading his resume and his job. And this is the reason why we are so happy to have Francisco Téllez here. Francisco Téllez was born here in 1945. He is the son of musicians. He's son of Jose Lopez Alavés, who is the author of one of the most recognized pieces of popular music here in Mexico. That's called Canción Mixteca or Mixteca Song. Also a musician for opera and cinema. He studied at the Mexican Conservatoire of Music, also in the Mogartatum. He's considered one of the pioneers of the professionalization of jazz in Mexico, and for more than 30 years he worked on the Superior School of Music, where he founded the BA on jazz, the first bachelor's degree in Mexico in jazz. And he developed the workshop in jazz in the same institution. It was he's characterized as the teacher of jazz in Mexico. He's a director of the quartet assemble of jazz here in Mexico. So let's give him a round of applause. As you see, all solemnity and ceremony is not his cup of tea. I want to tell you that we wanted to offer him an award, but he was so reluctant, as a cat that's fighting. And we asked him, okay, at least let us share with you in our event to have a conversation with us. So I'm really grateful that he accepted, because I entered his circuit very briefly when I was 19 years old. So this is a very personal way of saying thanks to him, and of course to thank him on behalf of other people, because while talking to him, we are not just talking to a single person. We're talking also to someone who has generated different possibilities, and I found it relevant to hear his voice, to make him present in this colloquium, especially for those who don't know him, or for those who don't know that much about the local jazz scene in Mexico. I would like to start with a question, an interrogation, a wide interrogation. Now that we have the the literature available. I would like to ask you, Francisco, for you, what's the start of of your relationship with music? It's clear that your relationship with music is it can come from your family, so one could say, oh, okay, so music has been in your life forever. But at the same time, each first contact is very singular and can have a different path. So what would you say to what would you answer to this question? I want to share with you that my father is a composer. He has composed a lot of works, and I remember, I mean, I was born in 1945, so when I was around 4 years old, my father was composing an opera that's called Nezahualcóyotl, and we were living there in Benjamin Franklin, uh, in the offices of a very famous political party in Mexico, in a street called Benjamin Franklin. And when I was a kid, I remember that the first way I entered music, the first moment, I was running around, and then I reached the piano and I just sort of tickled the piano. And my father was like, Do you like? Do you like piano? Okay, do that again. And that was my first. No, I would go and run around and making the ting ting thing. I was tickling the piano and I was improvising, sort of. Not all the time, just because then it's not music. There needs to be a space between, now that we have the silence, there needs to be silence between the tickling of the piano. So my father told me, Do you like it? Well, repeat it. So my father was composing this opera, and he was calling the singers there in the house. Well, an apartment. It was a very small apartment, and we were seven brothers, playing all around the furniture that was all broken because we were hopping around like rabbits. So my mom was telling me, "You're gonna sit there, over there, in the broken sofa," and I was listening to the rehearsal that my father had with an opera, and they were like, "Oh, hear the sound, and you can practice this moment," and that was my first moment of knowledge. That thing of "Do you like it? Repeat it." That's something deep there. I mean, not musically speaking. Yeah, I mean, almost all pieces, when you have a motive, a melodic motive, that motive, it's repeated. And of course, there are many formulas to make music in a mechanic way, in a mechanic fashion. What can you tell us about this family past, this generations? Because when I went to your house, I was very impressed because you were so kind and showing me all the archives that you are working with, amazing archives of this family history. A lot of musical sheets of elements that have to do with music in as a group, music as institutions, and I found particularly fascinating to check a sequence, or to be noticing a sequence of or at least like the history of jazz that enters in a long history of music. Mexico in the revolution, that it's always depicted in a certain way, and we don't usually think about jazz, how jazz has a role in history, has a role in the history of music in our country. Well, what I can share with you is that very recently I've been organizing, or trying to organize, all the work of my father, which is 70 years of work that my father created. So we have 4 operas, 17 quartets, 12 symphonies. It's a lot. Actually, in the closet that I have there, we have like from here to there, it's filled up with music. So there's all kind of music, paso doble, tango, concert music, music of all kinds, because my father moved like all around the possibilities of music. We learned from him since we were very little. And I think that that needs to be preserved somewhere where it can be consulted by people who are interested. It's interesting that I found uh, a, a I found a letter with 100 lyrics of ranchera music, and they were really good. And I have found so many things that I didn't even know they were there. I also found some drawings, photographs. There was a photograph of my father that I don't know if he's in Chapultepec or in Alameda, but when he came to Mexico in 1928, uh, playing there, and I was like, that's so weird. He was like a kid discovering the city back in 1928. Okay, so when did jazz enter your personal story or your personal history? Oh well, that's a long history. Do you remember that we were talking about that at that time? It wasn't easy to find discs or musical discs, so we had a radio, and with that radio, my father was well, when he had time, looking for the stations of San Francisco, Paris, uh, and he was like, "Okay, let's look for good music." And he was synchronizing the radio, and all of a sudden, boom, we started listening to jazz, and we were like, oh, okay, well, let's listen to jazz, and we were listening to the music. So among all the papers I found on my father, I found a piece that's called Without Your Love, Sin Tu Amor. And I played it here some months ago, that we played here, and it's a composition that says the best of jazz, and that's how it's written. It's 1929 when he composed that piece. I was born in 1945, so while I was running around in my house, I was just playing. He was playing something, so I just listened to music. The music was part of my childhood, rather than listening to it as a recording. I was listening to music live, being played live at home. Do you visualize this continuum that I imagine? I mean, from my perspective, of how jazz enters along with ranchero music and other mentions that you've made in this history that's a family history, but it's sometimes like a national history. Your family history has been also emblematic. Would you say that? Yeah, maybe. I mean, there are some examples. In other occasion, I was asked like how jazz came here to Mexico, and those situations that happen to you in life. At some point, I was working at a cabaret, well, in a restaurant. People say it was called 1880, and I was with Doña La Negra. Doña La Negra is a very important figure of the Mexican folklore, and with these songs, Mexican songs, Noche de Ronda or Night of Rounds. And I remember the original version of Agustin Lara, another important Mexican musician. There is a trumpetist that was called Chino Ibarra, and he loved to play the trumpet with sordina. And those recordings are even before. Uh, so there's the interpretation of Chino Ibarra with this kind of improvisation that was very similar to a melody in the school when we were learning how to improvise, improvising by reference, like not straight away or don't go to free jazz or something, you know. That's what we did at the time, and at the same time, everything was that there's starting to appear limitations that jazz emerged here and there. And at the end of the day, when in one occasion Cecil Taylor came to play at Nezahualcóyotl Sala, which is a concert place here in Mexico, a very reputed concert facility, and all the lights were out, and Cecil Taylor entered without feet, and he was stepping there and shouting. And after the shout, I realized, okay, that's jazz. That agony sound of people that's coming. Where does that come from? The moment they were taken away from Africa and they were brought here into America, and they don't even know where they are coming or where they are arriving. And then Cecil Taylor started to improvise for the next 3 hours, and that was amazing. I just wanted to add something really quick. In that occasion, there was a concert, a parallel concert of this composer Claire Fisher, and Cecil Taylor started to play, and all of a sudden, people started to go out. They didn't like what was happening. Like it happened something similar to what happened in Rayuela with Berta, that an accord, and Olivella watched the other people, and he goes out, and then another accord is being played, and silence producing machines. There's suspense, there's space, there's silence, and there's a moment of reflecting. Okay, this accord was not beloved, so let's change it. Oh, that's what Oliveira would say. No, he was there because he was. It was raining, and he was there listening to this pianist. But it's interesting to hear the silence. Okay, all of this makes me think about what you were saying about jazz in the years around 1968, and the way institutions or formal institutions were in a very marginalized place. So what is that for you? What's the implication of that? Well, when I studied in the Conservatoire of Music, Blas Galindo was the director. I had a great teachers, Vaquero Foster, and a lot of musicians and really good teachers. So in the cubicles are not displayed the way they are displayed now. There were cubicles for study in different places. So you were studying there, but if a student was playing something like a blues or rock music at the time, I'm talking about, I entered the conservatoire in 1959. So the cubicle was like, oh, okay, you cannot play that. And I was like, why? In my house, I can play everything. You can play bolero, you can play a symphony, you can play boleros, you can play Mahler. And then all of a sudden, in the conservatory was like, no, you in the conservatory. So we would share some information among the students, like what was available. And I remember in one occasion that we were taking the bus in the conservatory, all were singing La Boa es La Boa. And so when we arrived to the conservatory, okay, La Boa became silence because we cannot sing La Boa within the conservatory, but La Boa, which is a very Mexican song, a popular song. So we remained silent because we couldn't sing La Boa within the conservatory. So yeah, we were part of the 68 movement. I have always loved Julio Cortázar, and he was talking about the movement of the 68 in Paris. So here in Mexico, we were against everything. I had the chance to vote for the first time in my life at the time, and I voted for. I didn't vote it for Diaz Ordaz. Diaz Ordaz was a president of Mexico that conducted a mass killing of students. So, well, yeah, I was in that situation. I have to tell the story. I worked in the Hotel Balmer. I think it's a place that no longer exists. But we were in the 17th floor. We were musicians, and we will take the elevator to go up and down. So the elevator broke, and we were like, okay, we'll go up. So we went upstairs, 17 floors, and in the 15th floor there was this cigar woman selling cigars and selling tequila, and I was like, oh my god, I'm not going to go up to the 17th floor. And I was like, no, I'm not going up. And then the union of musicians decided that they no longer wanted to work with me for a week because I didn't obey the orders of going up 17 floors to play. So I went to my father and was like, this happened to me. And he was like, don't worry, go with your uncle. Interest in promoting jazz formally at school. How was it? How was the process? Well, remembering that in the conservatory I was not allowed to play music, rock music, or any other music that was not classical music, I decided to. Uh, I was a teacher on the classical area, and I remember now a student that was. Someone playing Paralisa or Fugalis, and I was like, that sounds like a swing because the tempo is weird. And from there was, I thought, we need the possibility of making workshops of something different, workshops of jazz, opera, and something else. And all the workshops disappeared, and just because I insisted, jazz continued to be a workshop until it became a bachelor's degree. But what year was that? I entered the Superior Institute of Music in 1968, and for periods I couldn't remain because you have to get it. It's not that you were given the job. And you say until it became a bachelor's degree, but was it really like it became? Well, it's a long story, a tough story, because we were given teachers in order to make the. Well, it sounds weird. It's not that we were given teachers. Teachers came in to help us work to work creating the program, the educational program. And I actually want to thank Pancho Mondragon. He's a very famous guitarist because he also worked with Jaco Pastorius. So he went to many schools in different parts of the world, and he gave me booklets of schools like Berkeley, a school in Germany, and I was checking like, okay, this is how knowledge is organized to to play jazz music. So I decided it would be good to study the same way we study music in conservatories from the beginning to our present date. So the study plan of the Superior School of Music is since the style New Orleans, swing, big rock, harpo, and so on. So the student that participates in these studies, they have a global knowledge, a very wide knowledge of the history of jazz. When this bachelor's degree started, we were that was weird. Because I made a document and the document was not accepted at the beginning. They told me, oh, this is missing and we need this and that. I made a second, a third, a fourth document. And it's a big document. We're talking about 350 papers in a typing machine that you have to put the paper in. So it was tough, it was not a computer. And it was terrible until the key of the zeta broke down because I wrote the word jazz so many times that the zeta just broke off. So the 11th version, computers emerged, so things changed a little bit. So well, now you can save the paper, but if you made a mistake before, you will have to start all over. Um, so many stories occurred, and I remember I had a student that his father was in human rights, and I was asked to go to a Beeps, well, to this restaurant, and it's like, okay, if it's already a bachelor's degree, then why not starting like while not rolling it out? That was on a Friday, and a director says, okay, the study plan is already authorized. And this guy was, he sent a letter to the Secretary of Education, to the Ministry of Education, with copy to the Director of Bellas Artes and the Director of the school, and to me. So it came like all the way down, like the documents are there. Why is this it's not rolling out already? So it was really hard, so to speak. It was a long process, a tough process, and a battle. And all the students were not passing their exams. Students would need to know how to the third of solfeus. So in the classical area, how could we call this? The serious professor. We are the improvised professor. We don't even know what we're doing. So they went with the professor, and the teacher was like, no. So of course, all my students were not passing. There was no possibility of getting some education. Like, okay, let's make a music theory or solve introduction to keep her some of her students, because otherwise it's going to be impossible. So there was a moment when I have just three students that did learn or did know some solfa, and I decided to invite some students as listeners, like, okay, you're not officially a student, but you have here, you can be here. So I had a lot of students who were quite important. Now in jazz we have Sylvie, Henry, the singer is Rael Cupiche, many students who were not official students and covered all the syllabus. What's the difference between having and not having a bachelor's degree in jazz? I think it's an acknowledgement of the musician that going to improvise, that still doesn't know what he's playing, but he will know what he will play. Yeah, at least he has a paper. The paper was not for him; it was for the others who needed some validation. I actually wanted to. They wanted to give me that little paper. The institution is now a bachelor's degree in jazz, and the authorities told me, okay, well, the next thing is the first one with a bachelor's degree you are. And I was like, what for? I mean, I have a lot of papers, and I have some small papers here in my pocket. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, so once it's established, and as you already mentioned, if you look back and you could propose stages to that trajectory, how would you characterize them? I think one important aspect is that many students that came from other realms of study, the classical music and problems with the family, because people were like, "You're going to be a batterist? No, get away from my home." So a lot of students had a lot of problems of that kind. So many students have the same problems. They wanted to play music. They want to express themselves, and that's where they created their groups, the assembles of the school. The I'm going to tell a story. Uh, Sometimes you say. Sometimes we don't even know if it's true or not, but I'm going to tell a story. Within summers, there was a guy that's called Antonio Sanchez, who's a great and famous musician, a great batterist, and he enters there, and then we were creating the assembles for the festival. Like, hey, here, over here, Gabo Gonzalez and Mayito were playing the piano, and Mayito were like, "Why did you send us with this guy? He doesn't even know how to play anything." And now he's famous. But that's what life is. He was in a moment where he was starting. He was playing rock music, percussions in the classic area at school. Yeah, I mean, this are stories, anecdotes. How would you describe the growth of this environment? What happened? It gained some traction. It started to resonate, or was it on a bubble? I think that it has to do with students going to the classes, their willingness to play. I started making jazz festivals, and I say this in such a way. Sometimes it's if I'm already making shoes, how am I going to sell them? Well, I'm going to open a store or something. So I decided to make jazz festivals and uh, bring someone from outside, invite people from the school. So I organized 33 festivals at school, well, at jazz school. Um, and getting to know people. So there were situations like that were interesting. That some students who were there, who we're going to play. It's like, how do you place me with the festival? I mean, Agustin Bernal is playing, and then I'm going to play after him. And so, like, well, study. So the festival came, and you had the possibility of. I remember Ernesto Ramos met Boyana, the twins, and that's where they met. So it was like bringing together students with professional musicians, and that's how you make people get in touch. That's amazing. It's have history, and on the other hand, this ability that you have to mix with real life, and with a very demanding environment. It's like a very particular moment. So what was your experience? Were you having a good time or not? I had a good time, really, but the authorities, they didn't want the area of jazz. The first thing they did was not allowing to clean my classrooms, and I had to mop my classrooms because nobody would do it because they were punishing me. So it was a space of always fighting. I was always fighting. I think that the very moment I retired because of family reasons, and people might have thought like, "Thank God," because that one guy was terrible. And then I tried to be director of the Superior Institute of Music, and I applied and applied and applied, and it was a no go. And people were like, "No, we don't want him because he's going to make us work." So it has been a long fight, a long struggle. Okay, so this is also somehow a cultural dimension. It's also a social and cultural dimension. So many things can be reflected that are somehow funny. Situations that seem to be funny, but are not totally funny. When I read Jean-Paul Sartre say like, okay, who are you, what do you do, if you are what you are, if you are what you do, and if you don't understand, I mean, you go to the bathroom and then you see what you are. I mean, just to understand that you have to do things. I mean, we're just passersby in life, and especially in life. Sorry, especially in music, because you can say, okay, it's already on the paper and all, but it doesn't matter. You produce the sounds, and sounds are in the air. Yeah, I mean, you can capture the sounds, and you can record, but they're just in the air, like that. An author that I would like. He says everything that enters or comes out of the body. I mean, it's a pleasure. So those who receive a stab, he wants to be stabbed again. And among all those pleasures that exist in life, the most subtle is that of music, the music that enters through the ears. It's a way of saying that music is the best thing in life. Yeah. Okay. I would like to invite people. Many of you have shared a, an experience, so I would like to invite you to take the floor or ask something to Francisco Téllez. Well, it was very interesting. Unfortunately, we will need many days to actually understand all what teacher Téllez has done, Maestro. I wanted to ask you, we all know that Maestro Téllez as well as his father. They have a lot of works and it's catalog. But I was wondering, what are we going to do with your work? Because you have been very humble today, but you are a beacon, not just for the development of jazz in Mexico, but also the popular culture of this country. And although music is in the air, one of the wonders of catching sound is that we can recreate it constantly. What are we going to do with that work that you have there and that you don't want to place, or that you don't want to record? With this microphone, this was I should have received this microphone at the beginning. I can hear myself even differently. No, in one occasion in a radio program, Germán Palomares had a round table with a lot of music albums, compact disc, and he told me, "Hey, look, how many musicians are recording their music," and I was like, "No, I chose a different path. Teaching. I'm not producing discs. However, today I have a disc around, and a second one that's called Boppers of the Street, and then other situations that my students mainly they know that story. I have composed a lot of music, a lot of music, like exaggerated amount, and I don't like to say that. I feel a little bit of shame because when I composed those pieces, I didn't compose with the aim of having a lot. I composed because I wanted to learn how to compose. So I have 6,300 pieces, and this piece that is now present in Modera, I composed that in November 17th of 1999, and I would wrote down in those notebooks. The same happened with Carlos Chavez, with the aim of keeping the of keep making compositions. I have also instrumentations, arranges, and I had to. I mean, yeah, they could be on albums. Recording is not hard work, especially Studio 13. They have a Poserdorfer Imperial. You can play with a good piano. So recording is not hard. It's like masterizing the equalizer, uploading it to the cloud. And I was like, oh, that's too much. I would rather just play live. I want to thank the question. No, because I want to highlight the sensation of disproportion that you are making, and it's I want to highlight this because it's important. It's important in your particular case, and on the other hand, as a metaphor of a wider situation that we are facing. So I leave this is quite important. I don't know who else would like to make a question or comment. My strategies, I think it's important, besides everything that we've been commenting and acknowledging also the work of Maestro Téllez regarding the pedagogy of improvised music here in Mexico City. I think that's something there was always a space of openness in the National Institute of Music, and many of us have this space as a place to get together. I remember the teacher Remy Alvarez, Germán Bringas. We went to a festival of jazz. There was always a possibility, a space of experimentation for those who were studying, those of us who were studying. We were able to understand music, to play with music, the possibilities of interaction with people, with ensembles. I think in my case that was essential to get close to what it means making music in a very open space. And I think that there has also been other spaces like that of uh, Remy Alvarez, conducted in the National School of etc. I think that is a route that's hidden, and I think it would be important to study it to get close to it. And I think that Maestro Téllez has reached or made it possible to so well to create something relevant, at least relevant for life, and also to share this in this colloquium. Yeah, within school, the space was there. Uh, the space for big jazz, for big bowl, free jazz. So the musicians that liked, the students who liked free jazz, we would support them uh, among all of us, and always checking the historical sense, like how it was born. Uh, we were playing for a long time. With John Coltrane, we also get close to the music of Charles Mingus, Ornette Coleman. Lately, I mean, very recently, I was interviewed, and Channel 4, in one occasion, Channel 4, Ornette Coleman died, and the conductors, I don't even know who they were. Like, Ornette Coleman died, and they just shared a small part, and it's like, well, he died, and they never transmitted anything. And it's an amazing musician. Oh, but at the time, you maybe received uh, some news about New York, or some news about some place from the global north. So maybe the concert music, because it's like super elegant and respectful. Uh, but that kind of music scene is the composer, avant-garde, contemporary. Well, he says it's contemporary. It's like I mean, he was going back, so there's nothing contemporary about it. Like getting closer to listen to other artists. Oh no, you should not listen to other artists because those are jazzies. I mean, there are no scholarships for jazz. So music is total. The learnings, the biggest learning and freedom of music is the freedom of birth, um, the freedom of sound. All that is important. And as a musician, and you're within that realm, of course you need to have some parameters. If you say, if someone all of a sudden enters free jazz, it's going to be really hard for him or her to find the interval. So while I was listening to all the checking to all the books that we will read, I always go back to linear chromatic that started the way we will play music. And he developed a method that was taught to Miles, the model scales and all the. In my classroom in the Superior School of Music, I always had a board with the scales. But what Joe Russell does is playing in chromatic line and non augmented line. And the point is to be, I mean, it's a method, and it's just one method. Of course, there are other methods, other methodologies. Hello. Some years ago, there was a homage to Francisco Téllez in Guadalajara, in Jalisco. I had the possibility to try to justify why the homage. That was absolutely absurd because it was justified only by itself. And among the words that I use is the story of Tejas is the immobility, the fight against immobility, even against the lack of mobility of him in certain aspects. One of the immobilizers, a sort of taser, was that humbleness, that laziness, that make it hard that it's better to just play instead of wasting your time. But I think it's against the lack of mobility. So who made this disc possible? But Tejas. But those who are catalyzers by the famous story of Francisco Téllez. So it's the people of the quartet, of the Mexican quartet of jazz. A quartet is made by four, but Mexican quartet of jazz has a lot of elements in their story. But he finally found someone who said, "Hey, maestro, we need to make a disc." There had been possibilities in the couple of compact discs. There was not a possibility that other Mexican jazzes will play something of Mexican musicians, and you would use the disc to play your own music. But I believe that, or I add up to what I mentioned in the Festival of Jalisco, is that this fight against mobility is that today Téllez are rejuvenated Francisco Téllez that is against the. He's now playing with the same vigor, with the same enthusiasm, with the same level of proposal he had when Mexican Quartet of Jazz, or make him Jodorowsky, that energy, that youthful is present in Francisco Téllez. So I think that the best acknowledgement we can do to Francisco Téllez is made by himself, even though he's quite modest. Thank you. We had time for one last question because we have a concert, and I hope this can be also a celebration. As anyone else would like to say something? Anna, someone? All my acknowledgement, all my love and acknowledgement, Francisco. We have lived so many things together. And I have nothing but pride of being your friend. Congratulations. And thanks all of you. So let's give a round of applause. going to play something because I came to this conference and now I'm not playing anything. Like, what the hell?
En este momento va a dar inicio para que no salgan. En realidad nada más van a subir a montarse y ya. Gracias.
Que por todos realmente hago una caravana para todos porque son geniales. Darío, Bernal, todos han tocado en todo el mundo, con todo el mundo. Su currículum es muy vasto, lo encuentran en la página de 17 Improvisación. Adriana Camacho, de nuestras más jóvenes contrabajistas.
First players. She has also created groups, assembled groups, and festivals just all around. So, Todd. He's more Mexican than most of us. He's been here in Mexico, a great improviser, and he's improvising free jazz, melodic music, and very interesting things. And he's always looking for new paths and all. So he's amazing, and I'm really proud. And Germán Bringas. great musician and player as a performer. So to hear free jazz, where we are allowed certain absolute freedom, where we all have the chance to do what we to do and be what we are, and we are always welcome. So I hope you could open more days a week. I know it's a hard work, but it will be amazing because a lot of people are making a line to listen to you. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, why not? Because there are a lot of improvisers, and we all have a team. And in 4 months or so, uh, we had to check a lot of things that need to be prepared. Well, I give the floor to the musicians. I want to hear them. They are wonderful, and thank you so much for being here.
La manifestación, la manifestación.
Well, I just wanted to share this amazing improvisation, this amazing sparks. It's uh, it's amazing to see how all this energy is being brought together, and I also find very interesting that these two improvisations how the second impro started very subtle with these long notes compared to the first one that started very up and very energetically with the saxo playing super fast. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I love this sensation of fire and power. Thank you. Anything you would like to say to the audience? Thanks for listening to us. Thank you.